Mexico. My dad is a nuclear engineer. And I've done a lot of thinking about energy, how our energy is produced. And I would like to say that in our society, I believe that fear has often played a role in our choices of which energy mode we choose. And sometimes that has led us perhaps to make the wrong choices. I'd like to contrast two of the main sources of energy production in the United States. Coal versus nuclear. Both are significant contributors to the electrical generation capacity in our country. And one thing I would like to contrast between the two is, or three things actually. I'd like to contrast their emissions and the public health impact of their emissions. I would like to contrast the waste of both technologies, and I would like to contrast the issue of accidents. Now, to talk about the public health effects, what I would like to do is, people who talk about health effects and mortality and that sort of thing, we often refer to them as bean counters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count beans. Let's call this the nuclear bean pot, and this is the coal-fired bean pot. And I'm going to put a bean in here for every death in the United States that's caused by emissions or other effects of that power generation technology. So we'll start with nuclear, and then we'll put a few in for coal. Now, coal causes deaths by mostly the particulate emissions. Coal-fired power plants produce sulfur dioxide, and sulfates are one of the primary causes of particulate emissions. It has been estimated that by environmentalists, of course, so the environmentalists, maybe they like to overblow things, but rigorous scientific study, I think, backs them up, that over 20,000 deaths per year, premature deaths in the United States, are caused by emissions from coal-fired power plants. So each bag of beans contains about 2,500 black beans here. So over the course of a year, about 20,000 premature deaths are caused by emissions from coal-fired power plants. Now let me move on to another point. The second point I wanted to cover was waste. And we all know that nuclear waste is extremely dangerous and poisonous, and that's true. But the fact is, nuclear fuel is such a highly concentrated form of energy that the amount of waste produced per person for all that person's energy needs is about the size of a bean. Whereas the amount of waste produced by coal-fired power plants is enormous and very difficult to deal with. In fact, it's very poorly contained in some instances. And people also talk about I'm going to spill the beans. But there you have it, about 20,000, and I'm going to have to take this bean out of here, but because it turns out that if you consider the entire fuel cycle of nuclear power, it turns out that mining uranium prevents the release of a certain amount of radon gas into the environment. Mining and burning that uranium in a nuclear reactor actually reduces the amount of environmental radium we're exposed to. Now that's not going to do anything to your radon level in your basement here in New Jersey, but in the area where there's lots of natural uranium deposits, that mining will actually reduce the number of deaths. So nuclear power actually overall, if you consider the whole fuel cycle, reduces the number of deaths from emissions in the United States. So back to the waste. people always say nuclear waste is forever, or nearly forever. It has a very long half-life. Coal waste is also dangerous. It's contaminated with toxic heavy metals, with mercury, with arsenic, and arsenic can leach into well water, and arsenic can cause cancer and can cause premature death. So not even considering the airborne effects, there are additional beams that I would have to put into this pile from nuclear waste, from coal waste, excuse me. Nuclear waste is containable. We have all seen the pictures of it sitting outside the reactor facilities because they haven't found a permanent place to bury it. It's not that they haven't found a way to bury it. It's technically feasible to bury it. The problem is that it's a political issue. So it's technically solvable, and it will be solved. The third thing I want to cover is accidents. We all know that probably the world's worst nuclear accident was Chernobyl. If you consider all the premature deaths that were caused because of Chernobyl, it would amount to about 10,000. In the United States alone, more than double that amount. So even the worst accident in the history of nuclear power is about half of the yearly, over the lifetime of the people affected, the entire lifetime, is about half of what is produced by nuclear in 1 year. Modern nuclear reactors are fail-safe. They're designed such that in order to sustain the reaction, an active movement of the nuclear fuel must be done. And as soon as something goes wrong, natural gravity pulls things back out. Now, I want to, this would not be an issue if we were doing away with coal power, but I wanted to, do I have to do something here?
Function
F7, function F7. I wanted to show this graphic. This is an image of new proposed coal-fired power plants in the United States. And you can see the arrows here. This is our region. A lot of these power plants are downwind of us. So, in fact, one of the dirtiest coal plants in the nation is just over the Delaware River from us in Portland, Pennsylvania. So if you ask, would I be in favor of building a new nuclear power plant in our immediate vicinity, I would have to say, if it's going to replace a coal plant, absolutely. Madam Toastmaster.
We'll take a few minutes to write down our responses.